You're listening to Haunted Tales with Skoto the Reaper. Crying Skies by Hymnofshadows. Chapter 5. Drowned. We all glanced at each other before following him out to see what he had been talking about. I noticed Rick already running down to the dock, and it didn't take long for me to see what Andrew had been talking about. The lake was littered with black objects, things that were just barely above the water. They all looked about the size of a small kayak. I first thought it was alligators of some sort, as there had always been rumors of them in this lake. But it only took a little bit more observation to figure out what they really had to be. "My God," I heard Jerry whisper. What was slowly floating in our direction wasn't anything alive, but rather floating bodies. I felt unease and disgust inside me. "Corpses?" I turned to the others. Where do they come from?" Jerry asked aloud. "That's freaking creepy," Olivia uttered from behind her, her eyes wide and her breathing heavy. A few possibilities ran through my mind, but it didn't take long for me to come to a conclusion. "The back half of the C-130. It crashed in the water over by Goat Island. Those planes can carry a lot of people, and assuming they all died on impact, they would float to the surface, and in the direction of the river by our cabin," I explained. The lake itself was a river that opened up, before splitting off into a very small flowing river and a dam at the other end of the lake. These bodies appeared to be floating towards the direction of the smaller river, but very slowly. That's why we hadn't seen them until now. "That makes sense," Andrew said. "I'm gonna go get my binoculars, see if we know for sure," Mr. Hill yapped as he spat out some of his dip onto his dog. Within a few minutes, he was back, scanning the lake. "You're right. They're all in military uniform." Mr. Hill spoke before offering us a chance to look by extending the binoculars to us. Olivia, Jerry, and I turned it down, but Andrew and Rob had a look for themselves. I had already seen enough morbidity at the front section of the plane's crash site, and I wondered if I would ever be able to get the image of those dead bodies, or these, out of my head. "Poor guys," Rob said as he looked, holding the binoculars up with only one arm, and the other in a makeshift sling he had fastened out of a jacket. The cabin door then slammed open suddenly, and Rick marched in. "Let me look!" He snatched the binoculars out of Rob's hand, causing him to earn a frustrated look. "Damn soldiers. I wonder if the Chinese had dumped them in the lake after the battle last night," he said after a moment of looking. "No, they probably came from the crashed plane," I said to him. "You still think our government is doing this to us? They would kill that many of their own?" Olivia questioned me, but not in a criticizing tone. I believed that she believed my theory, as she said she did. "Think back to the gunfight we got in, the one all of our ears are still ringing from. Don't you guys think it's suspicious that only one of us was shot, and non-lethally too? We were literally completely exposed when we ran up on that hill. I think the people who shot us were just trying to scare us away, or study how we would react in a scenario. Or there could have been another group of survivors trying to scare who didn't want to kill us. I mean, this is real life, not The Walking Dead. Breakdown of society just wouldn't turn us all into killers like that," Rob replied to me. An idea popped into my head. "Maybe there's a way to figure it out for sure. If I remember correctly, all planes have a black box in the back of them. I assume they're waterproof, and it looked like the back end crashed near Goat Island. Now the area around Goat Island's got to be pretty deep. Can we even dive that deep?" Andrew looked at me, his eyes still as wide as they were earlier. "It's worth a try. We have one of those underwater radars on our bass boats, the ones used for fishing. We might as well take it over and look for it. Maybe it even landed on the island itself." "I'm fine with that. We should leave some people back here to guard this house. I say Rob, Olivia, and Andrew stay here. You, me, Jerry, and my son Rick go," Mr. Hill said. "Hang on! I'm probably the best swimmer out of all of you guys," Rob protested. "How so?" Mr. Hill asked. "Well, I was on the swim team for starters. Was anyone else?" He looked around. "No, I played a real sport, baseball," Rick mocked him under his breath. Rob just shot him a mean glare before continuing. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. I practiced swimming here at the lake over and over again. Throw a football as far out into the water as I could and go get it. My mind flashed back to when he would do this, back when we were early teenagers. Rob had always loved war films and war video games and wanted to be in what he viewed as the most elite branch of any military in the world, the SEALs. From an early age, he was always one of the strongest guys I'd known, but obviously training for them was focused heavily around water, and so he joined the swim team and began his constant workouts here at the lake. I attempted them with him but could never keep up, and sometimes Jerry and I just wanted to have fun screwing around, but he was insistent on training, until he found the partying lifestyle. I hadn't seen him swim in a long time, but he told me he still practiced from time to time, and I was willing to bet he was the best swimmer out of all of us. But not now. Your arm, bro. I started talking to him. You wouldn't be able to swim. And you wouldn't want that nasty-ass lake water getting into your wound. Rob looked to me, then down to his arm, then back to me again, his face twisted in frustration. I hate it. But you're right. We'll stay here then. Good, let's get going. I'm gonna bring my pistol with us just in case. Mr. Hill started to walk out of the porch, but Rick spoke up. You sure you want Andrew guarding the lake house, Dad, after you ran away like a pussy last time? Hey, I don't want you using that kind of language, especially about your brother. Mr. Hill shot a look of anger at Rick. This was the first time I had seen him this mad, and I think it took even Rick by surprise. Yes, sir, Rick replied, and then ran into the house. The water here's so murky. You guys are gonna need goggles, Olivia said. Somehow, that had slipped my mind. Rick, you know where they are, Mr. Hill said to his son. Be right back, he said with snark, before walking into the house. A few moments later, he returned with 3 goggles and also what looked like an old iPhone from about a decade ago. There was no case on it, and the screen was cracked. He quickly handed the goggles off to me and raised his phone. What are you doing? Mr. Hill questioned. I want to get this on film. Others need to see this, he said, and started filming. So insensitive, I heard Olivia mumble from under her breath. I followed Rick and Mr. Hill outside and down to the dock, where we untied the boat and took off toward Goat Island. As we passed through the bodies, I felt weird. I had expected I would feel disgusted or sad about seeing this, and this entire event in general, but instead, I felt even more numbed than I did in normal life. It all felt so surreal to me, like I was in a bad dream. And any second, one of the dead soldiers we were boating by would reach up, grab me, and pull me down into the water. And I would wake up in a cold sweat in my bed in the lake cabin. But that didn't happen. Instead, we kept navigating the floating bodies, going slowly to dodge them. The thought of one being chopped up by a boat motor came into my head, and I quickly tried to push it out. I was the one driving, and as I got closer to Goat Island, I turned on the radar. There were also fewer and fewer bodies as we came up on it, meaning they were all floating as a large clump towards the river. Goat Island was just up around the bend, and a few minutes away, so it didn't take that long to get there. And surprisingly, Rick had kept his mouth shut the whole time. He had also been filming everything, most of the boat ride. He truly did remind me of Rob in a few ways. I don't see any wreckage on the island. I'm going to start circling around, I shouted to the others. Mr. Hill silently nodded his head in response. By now, Rick had stopped filming and was looking at the island. I looked at it to see if I spotted any goats, but didn't. They were usually in the more wooded part of it anyway. I did see something slithering on the mud next to the dark water. I pulled the boat closer and noticed it was a large water moccasin, or cottonmouth. I hate those things. My sister's friend had almost died due to a bite from him as a kid, and I never forgot. After a couple of times circling, I came across a spot where the radar picked up a large object lying against the surface. I slowed the boat down to a stop over it. Come check this out, I called over to Mr. Hill and Rick. They got up from their seats and walked over to me. I pointed at the screen and spoke. I've never seen anything that large in the water here before. That's gotta be the tail of the plane. I'd agree with you on that, Mr. Hill said. Look, Dad, I wasn't trying to be mean earlier to Andrew. I'm just worried. I mean, how are you going to trust him to have our back when we have to fight to defend our home? Rick asked his dad. I stood up and started to take my shirt off and stopped. I didn't like going shirtless around strangers and felt Rick would be the type to make fun of me. I'll talk to him when we get back, Mr. Hill replied. I couldn't help but get involved. You know, maybe not everyone is so eager to jump into trying to kill other people. That's called being human. We're not just animals who kill each other over territory. There's a reason we evolved to have these brains, so we can use that to solve problems instead of physical aggression. I don't believe in evolution, Rick simply replied. Don't believe in science? I barked. Mr. Hill cut off Rick before he could reply. Let's go ahead and check this out, you two. I know you're a decent swimmer, Rick, but what about you, Chris? I'm alright, but none of us will be as good as Rob. I imagine that arm's going to take a while to heal. I looked over to the depth finder, which read 34 feet. Is it even possible to freedive 34 feet? That doesn't sound too deep. Or is it? I asked the others. I don't know anything about diving, Rick replied. Neither do I, his dad followed. Rick then quickly took his shirt off and reached for a pair of goggles. He was just as scrawny as I had imagined. But that doesn't sound like anything. I'm sure I can make it, he said as he put on the goggles. I eyed Rick's phone and felt the painful reminder that we could no longer just Google anything we needed to know. And I was certain this wouldn't be the last time that would be an issue. Oh, how I miss you, Internet, I mumbled as I reluctantly took off my own shirt and reached for a pair of goggles. The temperature was perfect. The thermometer on the boat read 74 Fahrenheit. Rick started to lean over the water, but I stopped him. Wait. What? I know ears start to pop even when you dive like 10 feet. You don't think this could cause your eardrums to burst? That'd be the last thing we need on top of Rob's injury. Time to find out. Rick grinned and dove in anyway. Idiot, I thought, and attempted to dive in after him. Unfortunately, my dive turned into a half-curved belly flop. Once I was submerged, I began swimming my way down. The water was so brown and murky that I could barely see Rick swimming in front of me. And I couldn't see the bottom or any plane wreckage. Every few seconds, I would see tiny minnows dart past, and I felt a few nips at my leg. When I was younger, Rob, Jerry, and I used to have breath-holding contests. I remember struggling whenever I got past 30 seconds. Rob, of course, would always win them. One time he even broke a minute. I thought back to these memories as I struggled to swim deeper and deeper. It didn't take long for my ears to start hurting and for me to begin worrying about them. Quickly after, exhaustion overtook me and I began slowing down. I noticed Rick was going a lot faster than me. Where's this damn plane? I thought to myself. I tried to picture the screen of the radar again, to remember how far up the object had been sticking up. If I remember correctly, it was a little less than halfway up. Surely it had gone more than 15 feet by now. How long has it been? It had to be at least 30 seconds by now. Am I really that slow? A few more seconds passed, and I began to feel my lungs burn. I was about ready to give up when I saw Rick suddenly stop and notice something beyond him. In the murky water, I could barely make out the very back of the plane, its tail facing towards us. But that wasn't the part that made Rick stop. Wrapped around the side of the tail was a cargo net, and entangled in it were bodies. Bodies that were all broken and bent in the wrong directions. And with the water, they looked like they were trying to escape and float up to the surface, but the net was stopping them. Their arms were reaching up towards us, and their mouths were open as if they were stuck in a permanent scream. It was a truly haunting sight. I let out a sharp gasp, and my mouth filled with lake water. I closed my mouth, began to panic, and flailed my arms before turning around and trying to swim back up to the surface. But as I felt the disgusting water go down my throat, my body rejected it, and I regurgitated it back up into my mouth. It took everything in my power to still keep my mouth shut. The pain was overbearing, and I felt myself move slower and slower. The minnows nipped at me, and I couldn't even tell where I was. Is it really going to end like this? I thought about letting the water take me, and just floating down into the darkness. I would join the other corpses. It would be an easy way to escape this new reality, and nobody would have to go through the trauma of seeing my dead body. I imagined once the pain stopped, it would be a peaceful death. I would just float through the water. I stopped moving, and my vision began to slowly fade. I closed my eyes, and suddenly felt a hand grab my arm, jolting me back to reality. I looked over to see Rick holding me, and frantically moving the rest of his body. I began to swim again too, but my mouth opened and more water poured into it. The remaining seconds that it took to get to the surface felt like hours, and when we finally broke through, I was left coughing up water and gasping for air. "Are you okay, Chris?" Mr. Hill frantically asked as Rick climbed onto the boat quickly. I couldn't reply, and the two of them pulled me up onto the boat. After a few more seconds of violent coughing, I felt like I could finally speak. Shit. I just uttered through heavy breaths. "What were you thinking? You completely stopped swimming?" Rick questioned me, with actual concern in his voice. I waited for a second before responding, still catching my breath. I accidentally swallowed a bunch of water. I felt like I was about to drown. It's a good thing I was there to get you. Yeah. Thank you for that, I said, and finally stood up. There were a few brief seconds of silence as Rick went over and grabbed the towels. He threw me mine and began drawing with his. "I guess this means y'all didn't get the black box. Was the plane even down there?" Mr. Hill asked us. The image of the dead bodies wrapped in the cargo net entered my head again. "Oh, it was down there all right. But we couldn't reach it. It was creepy as hell, too. A bunch of the dead bodies had been tied up in the cargo nets, and we were just stuck down there in the water," I said. "Wasn't that creepy? I think I can make it with another chance," Rick said as he gazed back towards the water. "If you don't find drowned dead bodies creepy, I seriously question your psyche," I followed up. Rick ignored me and continued to look into the water. I thought he might just jump back up, and I thought he might just jump back in any second. I wasn't in the best of shape and didn't make it as close as him, but he still barely got further than me. He was also breathing so heavily I could see his chest moving, and I knew he wouldn't even probably have the energy to make it as far as he did last time. I began to worry he would make a rash decision and get himself killed, and I for sure didn't want to go back down there. Luckily, Rick's dad stepped in to stop him. "Son, I don't want you to hurt yourself. I think we're all pretty tired from everything that's happened, and could use some time to rest up." "Dad, I was close. I can make it." He turned back and argued. "Rick, I don't want to fight with you right now. We already know the plane was shot down by whoever's invading us, and we'll find out what this is anyway once we leave." Rick opened his mouth like he was going to object again, but stopped. He sat back down in the boat. I didn't know how much a C-130 costs, but the thought of the government crashing their own plane to see what we would do didn't surprise me. As soon as I felt dry enough, I put my shirt back on and slowly drove the boat back to the Hills Lake House. The bodies had floated out of sight by the time we returned. It had been a long day, and I felt myself almost struggling to stay awake as I drove back. "Do you need me to drive?" Mr. Hill asked me when we were about halfway back. "I'm good," I snapped back quickly. We arrived at the others all sitting out on the porch, eagerly awaiting us, and after tying up the boat, we headed up to speak with them. I noticed a frustrated look on Rob's face as we approached, and figured he probably felt useless now. "Did you guys get the box?" Jerry asked eagerly. "Nope," I spoke first. "What happened?" Olivia asked. "It's too deep. Rick and I didn't even get to the plane." "Just wait until this gets better," Rob said from where he was sitting. "I could have had it if I had gone a few more tries." "It wasn't that deep," Rick said with some snark. "If I was as small as you, I bet I could have made it. Try being 6'3", I said to him. I heard him murmur something under his breath, but I was too distracted to care. I had felt my stomach growl and realized it had probably passed lunchtime now. Mr. Hill must have been feeling hungry too, because he quickly changed the subject to food. "Anyone hungry for lunch?" he asked all of us. "I sure am," Rick said. "As much as we appreciate your offer, we should be getting back to our cabin to take care of our new dog." Jerry was the first to reply out of our group. I was certain he felt like we'd overstayed our welcome, as he was the kind of guy who hated feeling like he was mooching off others, which I found interesting because he could be pretty selfish too sometimes, and wasn't one to share much. "I understand. Here, let me go load you up with some food. I think we have some walkie-talkies too. That way we can stay in touch with each other." "Good idea," Jerry replied. I noticed Rick giving Andrew a dirty look, and expected him to say something. Andrew was looking down and fiddling with his rifle. But Mr. Hill noticed it too and quickly averted any confrontation. "Rick, why don't you come help pack them up some food?" he said to his son as he walked into the house. "Yes, sir," Rick replied, and followed him. Andrew walked over to me and started talking nervously. I'm sorry about my younger brother. He can be a real dick sometimes. He's always getting into trouble. I'm worried about him and your friend. They don't seem to get along. I was surprised he was coming over to apologize for Rick, and I looked back to see if Jerry and Rob were paying attention before replying. Luckily, they were off on the other side of the porch talking with Olivia. I think that Rob might be a little jealous of you guys, I said to Andrew. He turned his head sideways and looked at me with curiosity. Elstad is right here with you guys. And whatever's going on, you have him to help you out and to guide you. Their dad isn't, and I think they'd expected him to show up by now. What about your parents? I looked away. For a brief moment, I considered divulging the truth about how I really felt about my family, but I didn't want to dump all of my issues onto a stranger I didn't even trust. I would have to be pretty drunk for that. Might haven't come, but they didn't even know I was at my friend's lake house. That was all I left it at. A few moments later, Mr. Hill and Rick returned with a freezer full of meat and a walkie-talkie for us. We said our goodbyes and headed back to our own cabin. Bear whined eagerly as we returned. Olivia and I took turns petting him, trying to comfort him. The next week crawled by slowly. Our meat, which we had tried to keep in salt, spoiled quickly, but luckily we had a supply from the hills. Jerry wanted to keep the head as a mount, but he knew that would spoil too. So he spent much of his free time carving away at the head until it was just a bloody skull. As this was something most professionals did, it took him way longer than he thought it would. He also fed the fleshy parts of the head to Bear, including the brain. This caused a huge argument with Olivia, who was worried it would lead to Bear getting sick. For this, I was actually on Olivia's side, but Jerry and Rick insisted they had fed their own dogs stuff like this time and time again, and nothing had happened. Neither of them was argumentative as I, but Jerry, whilst Rob and I were in a heated debate, snuck Bear the bits of the brain anyway. This didn't bother me as much as it did Olivia, who almost looked like she would cry over it. It made things a little rewarding for a short time. Jerry had brought up the idea of us spending more time at the hills to get to know them, but the rest of us didn't want to. Rob very obviously didn't like the two brothers, and neither did I really. I, however, kind of liked their dad, but for many reasons I didn't really trust them. I couldn't stop thinking about that smell, or the picture of the other family. And the more I thought about them, the deeper my mistrust ran. I picked up on several other oddities, like the whole ordeal with the guitar. Rick had claimed that the guitar had just been bought before the apocalypse, but it seemed too coincidental along with the picture. Mr. Hill and Andrew didn't seem like the killing type, but psychopaths are good at masking their true emotions, and Rick seemed to hardly be affected by the gunfight or the crashed plane and bodies. In fact, he almost seemed to like the gunfight. I didn't know him well, and I knew it would be harsh to judge him like this, but could almost imagine him killing that other family so they could take the other lake house. I just couldn't figure out why yet. Maybe I was judging them too harshly. Jerry himself had turned to reading the Bible a lot, and I honestly didn't blame him. I was just worried he would start to try to push his beliefs on us. I didn't know what Olivia believed in, and I for sure didn't feel comfortable bringing up such a topic with her. Ever since the shootout, one of us would have to stay up and keep watch the whole night to make sure no one would break in and try to harm us. I had only done it once so far, but I had actually enjoyed it. That's because I dreaded going to sleep. Almost every night I had a recurring nightmare about those drowned soldiers. It didn't last long, but it would always be the same. I would be sinking towards them, unable to move. As I got closer, they would reach up, grab me, and the nightmare would end. I considered talking to Rob about it, but I was worried he would make fun of me. On his first night of watch, he had already decided to prank me. I woke one day early in the morning to a loud bang that made me jump out of my bed. I looked around frantically and saw Rob laughing the hardest I had seen him in a while, holding a lighter in one hand. "What the hell was that?" I questioned, rubbing my eyes. I noticed a can sitting next to my bed, with a small bit of smoke coming out of it. My ears were ringing a tiny bit. "So it turns out we have a bunch of firecrackers left over here from last year's 4th of July, including some M90s and M80s. "What? You lit off one of those inside the cabin?" "Relax. It was the M90, the pussy one. The M80s are the cooler and more powerful ones, and I'm saving those. We also have Roman candles, and those annoying ones you throw at people too, the black cap popper things." I really don't think any of them should be lit off, I replied, as Jerry and Olivia came in to check on the noise. Naturally, Jerry scolded Rob about it, which led to an argument. Jerry would probably be more compassionate about it if I told him about my nightmares, but I didn't want him to know. Last night had been Olivia's turn, and she had been asleep for most of the day. Jerry and I had spent most of the day hunting and Rob fishing. After hours of seeing nothing but more birds on the ground, I gave up and walked back to the cabin, where I found Rob cooking some lunch. You know what the worst part about all this is? He eyed me as I stepped in. What's that? No more internet. I can't look at TikTok, go play Call of Duty, look at memes, and no more porn, which is just devastating. I set down my now empty flask and my rifle before replying. That's what your imagination's for, Robert. Hey, I thought I said to never call me that name. And didn't you used to be like some sort of artist? Why don't you put your talents to use and draw me some Sports Illustrated like models? I think Olivia has some sketchbook or something. I think my talents in drawing would be better placed somewhere else. Actually, I take that back. The worst part isn't even that. This whole thing is screwing up my body. You know, in TV shows and shit, they always say these guys in the apocalypse are still somehow jacked. But it's only been a few weeks and I swear I can already feel myself getting weaker. I don't have the equipment here like a gym, and with the kind of diet we've had, we've got to all be losing weight. Why don't you just, do push-ups and shit? I would say I didn't expect you to say something so stupid, but I forget you haven't been to the gym in years. Calisthenics isn't the same as weightlifting, and again, it doesn't matter if I'm not keeping up my caloric intake. Okay, you've lost me. I've been thinking about your theory a little bit over the past few days, since I can't do much now but be a lazy piece of shit until my arm heals. And you thought that these could have been government people that were shooting at us to get us away from the plane, right? Possibly. Well, we shot back at them, which means we were shooting at our own government. I don't even know what level of crime that is, but that's gotta be up there. But I mean, it was just self-defense. Don't worry, Rob. I don't think they'll want us making any court appearances if we live through this. Whatever they're planning anyway. I trailed off as Jerry stepped in behind me, setting down a camouflage bow. He decided to switch to bow hunting, as he thought the idea of a loud rifle going off could give our position away to anyone who wanted to find us. I agreed with his logic, but the problem was that there was only one bow and another crossbow that we had, and I had never shot either of them. Once I got good enough with the rifle, I just settled with that, but I did promise Jerry that I would try to learn it. Any luck? I asked him. He shook his head and walked over to get a bottle of water out of the cabinet. None of us had ever trusted the pipes of the rusty cabin, so luckily there was a surplus of bottled water in the pantry. Drinking it lukewarm wasn't preferable, but you did get sort of used to it rather quickly. I've been thinking. It's obvious that we're in danger now. Whatever is out there, people are getting hurt. You mentioned the other week that Mrs. Kimberly had been all alone up in the marina. I was thinking that we should go get her. She's old. It's not safe for her to be alone. I glanced over to Rob before speaking. She's an adult. She's not a responsibility. You kidding me, Chris? We can't just leave her out there. She may not be our responsibility, but as people, we have a responsibility to help each other out. And not helping her could be damning her. Jerry retorted back to me. Barely getting enough food here for ourselves. Would we be able to feed another person? I asked. I'm certain the hills have enough food for it. Rob just wants that extra food so he can get his muscles looking big. So he can look good for when we all get ready to get killed one night, or if he gets extremely bored and wants to look at himself in the mirror. Rob grinned a little bit at my joke. Logically speaking, saving Mrs. Kimberly didn't make much sense to me, but I knew it was the right thing to do morally, like Jerry had said. Hey, we can go get her. But I'm not sharing my bed with her, I said to Jerry. Fine by me. She's been a good family friend. Rob followed up. He brought the steaming pan off of the old gas stove and brought it over to the paper plates he had laid out for lunch. Luckily, their stove was so old it could be lit manually by a lighter without power. We agreed to eat before going to get Mrs. Kimberly, and Jerry went to wake Olivia up. She agreed with our plan of getting her and offered to let her sleep in her bed. We finished up our lunch first. Jerry wanted to hurriedly get over to the marina, but Rob wanted to clean up the kitchen. He was also still walking around with an arm in a makeshift sling, although it had gotten better, according to him. I saw him wince often when he moved, so I had a feeling he was just trying to act tough. So Rob stayed behind, and the rest of us traveled over to the marina on the bass boat.